Namaste. I'm Robin, tarot reader, seeker, mystic, witch, and your host for this episode of Have a Seat at the Mystic's Table, a place where we discuss the creepy, macabre, and sometimes the downright bizarre. This week, I'm going to be exploring some of the creepiest stories from America's backroads, detailing encounters motorists have had with demons, monsters, wild animals, and ghostly hitchhikers. Many of these highways and byways have now become famous and are known as some of the most haunted roads in America. From Archer Road just outside of Chicago, Illinois, to Hairy Man Road located in Round Rock, Texas, we're going to discover the origins of these chilling experiences from across the nation. If you are listening to this podcast while traveling down a long, dark, winding road, heed this warning, because these stories are some of the most terrifying examples of roadside hauntings ever documented. But first, a word about our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by the Mystic's Table, one of the largest suppliers of metaphysical and occult products in the U.S. With over 7,000 curiosities in stock and free nationwide shipping, check them out and visit our blog at mysticstable.com. This podcast can also be found on Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, and iHeartRadio. Of course, you can always follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Probably one of the most well-known and classic tales in our selection of haunted roads originated on a small stretch of Route 171 near Chicago. Known as Archer Road, stories involving a vanishing hitchhiker begin to emerge from travelers nearly 90 years ago. The roots of many similar urban legends found throughout small-town America can be traced back to this tale. Motorists driving northeast on Archer Road between what is now known as the Willowbrook Ballroom and Resurrection Cemetery should be on the lookout for an entity known as Resurrection Mary. Many who have driven along this road claim to have picked up a female hitchhiker. The woman is always described as young with blonde hair and beautiful blue eyes. She is first seen walking alone along the side of the road, wearing a white party dress with dancing shoes and carrying a small clutch purse. Understandably, the drivers feel compelled to help this stranded young lady and offer her a ride. She is said to sit quietly in the passenger seat, but after a few miles down the road and once they reach Resurrection Cemetery, she will suddenly request to be dropped off. Walking off in the direction of the cemetery, she disappears before reaching the gates. Although some of the accounts claim that she disappears from the passenger seat as the driver goes around to open the door for her. In other versions, she simply vanishes as they drive past the cemetery, never speaking a word. There have been more than 36 substantiated reports since the story was first recorded in the mid-1930s. And in addition to these versions of the story, Mary has been known to appear in other ways. There have been several well-documented incidents where drivers have called the police to the location, stating there is a body of a woman on the side of the road, only for the body to disappear before the police arrive. No matter how she happens to appear or depart from these good Samaritans, one thing is abundantly clear. They are all left baffled and shaken, with an encounter they will never forget. So who was Mary? And why does she haunt Archer Road? Legend says that she is the ghost of a young girl who had been attending a dance with her boyfriend at O. Henry Ballroom, now known as Willowbrook Ballroom. During the date, they had an argument. She left and began walking up Archer Road. Unfortunately, she did not get far before she was struck by a reckless driver, who immediately fled the scene, leaving her to die on the side of the road. Her grief-stricken parents had her buried at Resurrection Cemetery, wearing a white dancing dress. Some historians have attempted to link this tale to a woman by the name of Mary Bregovy, who died in an automobile accident in 1934 and was buried at Resurrection Cemetery, but her accident took place on the downtown Chicago loop, not Archer Road, and she had dark brown hair, not blonde. There is another young girl whose story comes close to matching the details surrounding this legend. In 1927, a young, fair-haired, blue-eyed girl named Anamalie died in an auto accident while on her way home from the O. Henry Ballroom. Anna was a devoted Catholic and was known to go by the name Mary, which she shortened from her middle name, Maria. The accident that ended young Mary's life took place shortly after passing Resurrection Cemetery as the car was turning east on 271. Although this Mary was only 13 years old and had been out dancing with members of her family, not a boyfriend. Furthermore, Mary was buried at St. Casimir Catholic Cemetery, not Resurrection Cemetery. Or was she? There is some debate about this. According to many, at the time of her death, there was some type of issue with staffing at St. Casimir. Some of the bodies were temporarily interned at Resurrection Cemetery until they could be buried at St. Casimir. However, by the time they began transferring these bodies, many of the coffins had deteriorated in such a way that it made making these transfers difficult. Because of this, many of the bodies were left at the temporary grave sites of Resurrection Cemetery, but were still listed as being laid to rest in St. Casimir. It's hard to say if this could have happened to the Mary in question, but it can't be ruled out. Paranormal investigators and historians are still trying to determine who the Mary that haunts Archer Road may have been, but in truth, we may never know her identity. Heading east to New Jersey in the town of West Milford, starting at Route 23 and running north-south, you will find a long, desolate 10-mile stretch known as Clinton Road. The road is a poorly maintained, narrow, two-lane byway surrounded by mostly public woodlands. This road, like the nearby reservoir and stream, gets its name from the original settlement of Clinton. Clinton Road has officially been given the title of the most haunted road in America. So, of course, there is a whole slew of legends attached to it. One of the most well-known concerns a bridge near its infamous Dead Man's Curve. According to some, if you place a quarter on the yellow line, it will be returned to you at midnight by a boy who drowned underneath that very bridge. In other accounts, coins tossed into the water will be thrown back and people see the boy's reflection on the surface of the water. And in other stories, the boy is less interested in the coins and more interested in saving your life. He'll push you off the bridge to save you from being run over by a car, as he was. It should be noted that there are no correlating police reports for a boy ever being killed or drowned near the bridge. The most likely explanation for these stories is that the boy under the bridge is just your run-of-the-mill local urban legend, dreamed up by bored teens looking to spook their friends. Nevertheless, he is one of the most prominent residents of Clinton Road, and people continue to see him. There are hundreds of stories about people who have driven the road at night and been chased by phantom vehicles, which mysteriously vanish once they reach the end of this stretch of road. One such story claims that some years ago there was a girl driving a blue 1988 Camaro. She was headed south down Clinton Road towards Route 23. As she picked up speed, she smashed into the cement divider on the sharpest turn of the road and was killed instantly. Legend has it that if you tell someone else this story while on Clinton Road, you will see some combination of her or the blue Camaro drive past you. In my research, I was not able to account for a girl being killed on the road driving any color Camaro. This story seems to have no documented origin and, like the boy under the bridge, is most likely just another myth. I cannot deny the road's ability to creep people out. And while there are many other desolate roads in the area, for some reason, Clinton Road is the only one that people have terrifying encounters on. There are a few creepy tales from this road in which the origins have been documented. One such tale is known as the Iceman of Clinton Road. In 1983, a man on a bicycle was going down the road. On his ride, he noticed a vulture feasting under some nearby trees. He got off his bike to investigate, and before he knew it, he had walked upon a human body. An autopsy of the body would later reveal some strange discoveries. There were ice crystals formed in the blood vessels close to the heart, and the organs had decayed at a much slower rate than the skin. The conclusion was that this man had died of foul play, and someone had frozen him after death in an attempt to throw off the investigators. The man was eventually identified as someone involved with mafia activities outside of Rockland County. The investigation ultimately led to the 1986 arrest of Richard Kuklinski, a New Jersey native involved in organized crime. Kuklinski confessed to being the killer of not only the victim in this story, but over 100 others as a veteran hitman for the mob. He reportedly used the same disposal methods for his other victims, which earned him the nickname the Iceman. In the end, he pled guilty to 5 of the murders and received 2 life sentences, which ended with his death in March 2006. Clinton Road legend has it that you may see some of his victims standing in the woods in the cold of winter. I could have several episodes just on the tales of Clinton Road. There are definitely some powerful energies at work in the area.
When we come to see you, the teddy bears are here to play. If you don't come play with us, then we will kill you.
To Ohioville, Pennsylvania, where there are a set of roads with a somewhat unique type of haunting. Known as Mystery Mile by many locals, Wolf Run Road and the 2-mile road running perpendicular to it, known as Kelly Road, have been noted as hosting an assortment of strange activity. It appears that most of the stories are from those traveling down Wolf Run Road, but some claim that it is actually Kelly Road that is haunted. Wolf Run Road was originally supposed to go in a different direction. A portion of the road was never completed, which is why, beginning in the 1940s, it was nicknamed Mystery Mile by the locals. It was kind of a joke for the townspeople who could not understand why they started this road and never finished it, and it just went to nowhere. The paranormal activity in this area is known to be malicious and occasionally violent. No one is sure what causes the activity, but theories range from the ghost of distressed early settlers to a curse being placed on the land by the dwindling Native American tribes in the 1700s. There have been multiple accounts spanning decades of previously docile animals becoming violent and rabid when traveling along Kelly Road. Farm animals near the stretch of road have been known to escape their enclosures and chase people. Strangely enough, the activity stops after the first mile. The Mystery Mile runs between 2 stretches of dark woods. Those who pass through the road at night have reported glowing white figures running through the woods beside them. Many people have also reported hearing strange noises coming from the forest. Several residents claim they have seen glowing apparitions of children dressed in colonial clothing. The children are described as having angry expressions. They have chased people down the road and are usually surrounded by a fog. There are multiple accounts of a young, angry boy showing up in people's yards and staring through their windows. One former resident reported the boy standing in her bedroom, glaring at her. She later moved, but still had constant nightmares of the child. There are also reports of people who lived or drove along the road suddenly turning violent for no apparent reason. The road has been studied by several paranormal research teams, but so far, all of the results have come up inconclusive. For now, whatever is causing these occurrences will continue to remain an unexplained phenomenon. The next stop on our list is a remote and rough dirt road outside of Huntsville, Texas, that for years has had the reputation as a place you don't want to be after dark. Even the few people who live on the scattered ranches in the area will tell you they will do without something they need rather than take this road towards town once the sun goes down. The road leads to the old Martha's Chapel Cemetery, and though it is officially named Bowden Road, it is known by locals as Demon's Road. With a creep factor of 10, even in the bright light of day, there are good reasons why it has become known by that name. Since the time when only horse-drawn wagons traveled down this path, there have been tales of disturbing encounters and eerie hair-on-the-back-of-your-neck standing-up feelings. Numerous claims have been made that strange, faceless, threatening creatures appear out of the woods on either side of the road. The one thing in common with all the reports from Demon Road is that no matter what form the spirits choose to reveal themselves, they have never been anything less than hostile. One of the creepiest stories that I heard regarding Demon's Road took place in 2001. A man named Bob, who lived in Houston, heard about the paranormal activities on Demon's Road and convinced a friend to go with him on a road trip to investigate and see these things for themselves. As Bob parked beside the cemetery, he saw that his friend had fallen asleep in the passenger's seat. It had been a long drive, so not wanting to disturb his sleep and figuring he would join him after he woke up, Bob left to explore the cemetery on his own. As he was walking around reading the epitaphs, he saw something moving on a grave next to where he was standing. As he watched, frozen in horror, a hand slowly began coming up through the ground. Within a few seconds, the whole arm was above the ground, and it began grasping around as if in search of something. The undead hand reached Bob's pants leg and grabbed a hold. Finally able to move, Bob instinctively reached down and grabbed the hand to pull it away from his pants leg. But the hand released its grip on his pants and abruptly latched onto Bob's wrist. It began pulling him down. At that time, his friend showed up and began frantically pulling him away. With both of them pulling and jerking backwards, Bob managed to get away from the clutching hand. After running a few yards away to safety, Bob turned to look at his friend, only to find he was nowhere to be seen. Confused and mightily frightened, Bob continued to run back to the safety of the car. As he quickly opened the driver's door, he saw his friend slumped over in the passenger seat, still asleep. Bob quickly started the car and spun away from the cemetery with dirt flying from his rear tires. As the motor raced and the car swayed from side to side, his friend fell toward him, his eyes open, but unseeing. It was later determined that he had died of a heart attack hours earlier, apparently during the drive down Demon's Road towards the cemetery. In 2018, a YouTube video featuring Google Street View images of Martha's Chapel Cemetery received hundreds of thousands of views. In the images, which I have included on our blog page, you can see a young girl peeking out from behind a tree, as well as a tall, dark figure roaming in the nearby field. I have actually been on Demon's Road several times. I attended Huntsville High, and as a teen, I, along with other thrill seekers, ventured onto Demon's Road every so often. We did see some red lights in the distance one time, and there is no doubt that you get a very uneasy feeling when traveling down this road. As an adult, I have not been back, nor do I plan on returning. Finally, the last destination I'm going to discuss in this episode is one that I have recently traveled down. The name alone is enough to send shivers down my spine. Hairy Man Road runs perpendicular to the Brushy Creek. It is located on what used to be the outskirts of town in Round Rock, Texas. I try to avoid the area, but I have made the trip down this road late at night more times than I care to remember, although it isn't as bad as it once was. The area has grown quite a bit in the last few years, but as recently as a decade ago, it was a winding, dark, and desolate stretch of road lined with thick woods on both sides. There is a smaller area of the road that is still very dark and uninviting. While I have never personally seen anything on the road, I definitely have a tendency to speed if I find myself out that way. Before I even heard the story, I could sense something was lurking in the wooded area along this road. Turning onto the road has always made me uncomfortable. Now that I know the story, having to encounter this road at night is really more than I can handle. If I lived in one of the neighborhoods that now surrounds this area, I would avoid having to travel after dark. Although, to be honest, I find it just as unsettling during the day. The legend that is tied to the road and the origin of the name dates back to the 1800s when settlers were first coming to the area. The story goes that a young boy became separated from his wagon caravan during a dark and stormy night. As the group was trying to escape the rising waters of the nearby creek, he was not able to keep up and found himself stranded and completely alone. The boy managed to survive on his own and grew up in the wild, becoming a hermit. Not being civilized, he avoided contact with people and terrorized anyone who dared enter the area. He would run out and frighten the horses of stagecoaches and solitary riders alike. His legend grew in the area until one day he was ultimately trampled to death by the horses of a speeding stagecoach. To this day, frightened travelers of the road swear that they have seen a large, very hairy man lurking in the bushes and overgrowth along the side of the road. People have claimed that a Bigfoot-type creature ran out in front of or chased after their car as they drove down the road. Oddly enough, since 1994, an annual festival has been held in honor of the hairy man. Food, music, games, and other activities are held in the park of the same name, with the grand finale of the Hairiest Man contest. Not just hair on the head is judged, but also the back and chest. The hairier, the better. It's a bizarre tale, but having driven down this road before the population growth, it is not hard to imagine the area as the perfect hiding spot for Sasquatch or large hairy hermit men. Thank you for joining me today. Don't forget to subscribe and come back next week where I will be continuing with our creepy theme for October. We will be discussing the most unusual and unexplained cases of real-life documented exorcisms. I'm Robine, and this has been Have a Seat at the Mystic's Table.